Perfect.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Carlisle. Unfortunately, we have a super special edition tonight. We have professional voice actor Christian Eras. And
Yay!
yay! So welcome. So, for those who know who he is, for those who don't, he works with such studios as Crunchyroll, which we all know,
Mm.
Tencent, Disney Plus, Blizzard Entertainment, and other ones, and has so far amassed over 70 anime episodes, movies, and video games, including fan favorites like Diablo 4, Sacrificial Princess in the King of One Piece, and so many more. It is so neat to be able to say all these really popular ones in one voice, not just have one. Is so cool. Anyway, so when he's not doing this, he also performs with his improv comedy troupe Take One. So this is a man of many hats. So welcome, Christian.
Thank you. I do like that spin, a man of many hats, not man who can't make up his mind.
Ah, but it's all kind of there. It's entertainment, which is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's all acting, and that's my passion. That is definitely the decision I have made is acting. So, and
Excellent.
being able to do comedy, that's something that, oh man, even before I was acting, comedy is in my, it really fills something in me.
Well, I will tell you as a consumer of, people who make people laugh, I am so appreciative that are people like you that, A, first of all, voice these fantastic shows that I get to put on Crunchyroll or Disney Plus or Netflix and then get to enjoy the dubbing of it instead of having to read so I don't have to read while I'm doing things.
Yeah.
So that makes my life much easier, as well as just comedy and sharing that kind of, anything to make you laugh because we need so much of that in the world these days. And it's so important for people like you out there to be doing this and bringing this to us.
Thank you. I'm blushing.
And see, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why he is as great as he is at these things. So now I am going to kick this off with the obvious question I imagine is everybody's on everybody's mind. How long did it take to grow that mustache?
So that's a great question. I'm so glad we're starting here. So this mustache is about 2 months old, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
pretty. Yeah, it's actually
Dude,
I'm
that's a
impressed with it
rocking
myself.
mustache, dude.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm growing it specifically because I am doing a Renaissance fair. I'm going to be working
Oh,
at one as a performer, and I'm going to be a villain, like a major villain. And so
well, that's
I'm
cool.
what else is more villainous than a big old spirally mustache? Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I'm thinking about that. All those Disney villains, especially, and they always work
Yeah.
that stash too. I love
Yeah.
it.
And I may or may not. So you have to have a mustache twirling villain who's going to kidnap someone.
I like that. I
Yeah.
agree. I love
Also,
that.
too, it makes me laugh every time I see it in the mirror. And it goes back to that comedy thing. Like if you can start your day off laughing, it's for me, it's a good way to start my day.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. I wish I could do something like that. I just can't. So,
Really? So this is actually the first my mustache when I was younger was the first thing that grew in thick. And so
wow.
the rest of my beard's a bit thin. My chin scruff is actually I have a bald spot in the middle. And then it's also asymmetrical, so my mustache is the only thing that I really, really love about my facial hair.
That's cool. That's really cool, though. All right. So now let's get on to what everybody's going to be here for, other than that cool stash.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
then my hair I'm using no.
All right. Love it. Love it. So the magic question.
Oh, that is what got me into it. So, I mean, my story isn't super crazy, right? I mean, acting is what I enjoyed. So, as a kid, I got to watch like my old specifically what kind of turned me on to that as a path of like, oh, that's really cool as an actor was learning that Luke Skywalker, who I
That's right.
and when I
Mark Hamill,
found,
right? Yeah.
yeah, and when I found that out, someone who is kind of like Luke is a hero, but he's kind of dorky. He's not sure of himself. Even like at the end of the trilogy, the original trilogy, where he's a bit more self-assured, he's still a kid. He's still awkward. He's all like I call it like he's all elbows, you know. And but then as the Joker, he's
I know.
completely different, you know. He's so sure of himself. I mean, he's insane. He's bigger than life. He's everything that Luke isn't. And
That's funny. Yeah.
to see him be able to do that in this field of animation, I don't know, it showed me like you can do anything in animation and games and things like that behind the microphone in front of a camera, which I'll do those projects, and I think that they're great and they're fun. They have their space in my heart, but I'm always going to be me, you know. And while that's great, being me is fantastic. Well, that's weird to say. Hey, everybody, look at me, I'm amazing. But, like, being me is fine. But I can't. I mean, I could play a werewolf, I guess. I would have to have a lot of prosthetics on, and it would suck. And even in the end, like for those kind of movies, I would still be in the ADR booth doing voiceovers because you can't hear me through all the makeup or the mask.
True.
That was it for me. It was just the infinite possibilities inside of acting. And I love that. I'm restricted by much fewer things than I would be on camera.
Excellent. That's cool. So what was it then that, how did you get your break into it?
Mm. Accidents.
Oh,
So that's one of those things where in voice acting, it's kind of funny to explain to people who want to get into anime specifically. Is like, how do I get in? And I'm like, I wish I could tell you to do it like I did, but I can't. Like the answer for most people, like the most direct straight line is to have an agent who is in contact, who is on the list of Crunchyroll to send out those auditions,
right.
or to network and become friendly, get on the radar of one of the directors who will pull you in, right? Me, I did neither. I had an agent, but they were not on the list of Crunchyroll. They were a small-time
Oh,
agent. I have since changed agents. Me, I take a lot of classes. I'm constantly taking classes and learning and be friendly and meet people. Well, at one point during COVID, when COVID was, you know, very, very restrictive, when, people couldn't be within 6 feet of each other, Funimation at the time needed groups of people who were comfortable being inside of one booth together to do Walla.
oh
Walla
wow.
is background sounds. So if you go to like, almost at the mall, no one knows what a mall is anymore. If you go
Right.
to a restaurant and you're quiet and you just listen, right?
Oh,
And it's a very common entry point for people because it's a great way to get in the booth. And so yeah, it was these group of fellas who I only knew one of them. There were five in total. I only knew one of them, and they had all these groups of friends, but for whatever reason, they decided to ask me to join their group. And the one guy, I call him the captain, he had worked with Crunchyroll before, so he was the in. But
excellent.
but now I can't say, hey, do that, join a Walla group because they don't exist anymore. Because now all
Oh,
the restrictions are gone, so they don't use groups. They just call people in individually. Um, you know,
interesting.
yeah. So now, like, it's literally agency or getting a personal relationship with a director. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes a lot of sense. So, I
It's
mean, it sounds
tough.
like a really kind of cool, it just kind of, like you said, accidents. And I mean,
Yeah.
not in the sense that, you didn't know what you're doing and things like that. You just happened to be at the right place, right time,
Yeah. And
right
so,
conditions, and it worked.
yeah, absolutely. And I always say that to people, like, because there are some folks who they don't want to start acting and taking classes until they get the opportunities.
Hmm.
But to me, like, I've had luck described to me as the crossroads between opportunities and preparedness. If the
Fair enough.
opportunity comes and you're not ready for it, that opportunity is going to slip you by.
True.
And if you are ready, if you are prepared and you're just waiting for the opportunity, that first one that comes by, you snap it up and you run with it. So maybe I fell into anime on accident, but I have worked my butt off to prove that I belong to be there. You know what I mean?
So now we have voice actor,
Mm.
comedy,
Hmm.
for the improv, and philosopher.
I I actually really like philosophy. It was
Wise man say.
yeah,
No, that was actually that was really good. I think that was a really good point to make, and I think it's so true. So, I mean, what what a wonderful and fundamental concept to throw out there, because I think there's a lot of truth to that. If that intersection occurs and you aren't prepared, you
so
know,
I will say so to tell people about a bit more about my journey. I don't think I've ever talked about this in public before. So years before I got a real opportunity to join Funimation's roster, they used to have open casting calls and relate to those people who say like, "Oh, I don't want to take that chance because I'll fail or whatever." And so they want the opportunity to come first because I did that. I was going to these open casting calls hoping that they would cast me, but I stopped acting. I hadn't acted in years, and so I was so rusty, and I never practiced specifically the art of acting in front of a microphone. All of my experience was on stage at that point.
sure.
And I was super rusty and I didn't know what I was doing, and it was years of going to these open casting calls to the point where they stopped doing them because they weren't finding people who were actually there and ready.
Interesting. No, it's funny, kind of going back to your improv and now kind of what you're talking about. I think it's a great segue. You know, you do a lot of improv. You want to shout out just in case?
Yeah, so it's actually going to be at a convention called Windbloom in Mesquite,
Oh,
Texas.
ooh.
It's going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Windbloom is specifically a Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail
Oh,
centric
wow.
con. It's actually really fun. There's going to be like 10, 12 different actors there that are in at least Genshin, if not both. So
Wow.
it's going to be a great time. We have shows all weekend long.
That's crazy. Well, make sure we'll add that down into the notes below at the end of the video. So please make sure you check that out if you are in the Mesquite area this weekend. So going back to that improv. So how do
Yeah,
you implement your improv? That or to blend it?
yeah, I will say there's less room for improv inside of dubbing, whether it's anime or live action. There's a
Mhm.
bit more play when it comes to stuff that will animate to you later. Sometimes. It depends on how big the project is. Like in with Diablo, that's such a big company and everything is distilled and written on for, weeks, months, years. By the time it gets to me, they're like, we need this word perfect. Anime is very similar. I have animation in front of me, and I can't just start adding things because there's only so many flaps that exist.
Okay, that's
That
a good
being
point.
said, that being said, Walla, like we were talking about before, is all improv. It's not scripted. They'll sometimes give you suggestions of like, hey, this is what the scene's about. So here are some sample lines. I tend not to use them just because other actors who don't have the improv experience, they rely heavily on those lines. And
Mhm.
so that way I don't take any of the lines away from other people. I'll just improvise. But that's that. Like we'll have sometimes several minute long cues, which
Oh,
is like,
wow.
for most people like, oh, a couple minutes making stuff up isn't hard. It's hard because we don't do a single pass of those lines. We do 2 to 3 depending on how big the groups are. So you have to be that character for 2 minutes straight without breaking any of the Walla rules that exist, and then do it
Wow.
again as a different character, and then possibly do it again as another character. So you entire episode, and
Sure.
a lot of it will have Walla. So you having a strong improv base is very helpful for Walla,
Okay.
especially. Yeah. But even then, there are times where like I will be doing a line, and then after I've recorded it, I will be kind of just either joking around or talking with the director, and I will say something, the script, and it's happened to me a few times where they have changed the script to match my improv. And so then I'll go
Wow.
back and do it again with the new line.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty
It's gotta,
great.
it's gotta feel pretty good that when you're given something and they recognize something that you've done and say, "Hey, we're going to change this," and then when you hear it, well, let me ask you this before I. Have you watched your animes that you voiced?
Um, Sometimes I will go and mm, sometimes it depends. Like I have to really be into it. So I will say here's a big improv moment for me. It's actually one of my favorite moments of recording ever. So and it's so funny because it's a small little character. I don't even say a line. So it was in Jahi, the Great Jahi. Oh gosh, I can't remember the rest of it. It's called the Great Jahi,
Mhm.
and there's a spot where the main character Jahi is in a forest looking for a crystal, and there's her. And so at one point, a little tiny baby snake just wanders in front of her. And the snake comes on screen, and the director doesn't have anything in mind for me. He just knows he needs something. So he says, I don't know, do a hiss or something. And I just had a wild hair up my butt, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a joke one. We're all gonna laugh, and then we're gonna do it again serious. And so the snake comes on, and I just go, hiss. And it is dead silent in my headphones. Dead silent. And I was like, uh-oh, Christian made a joke at the wrong time. And then he turns the talkback mic back on so I can hear him, and the entire room is laughing. And I was like, okay. Whew. And they kept that take. It is on, you can go watch that episode of Jahi going through the forest, and there's a little snake that comes out, and it's just me being silly going, hiss.
Well, I mean, it made me laugh just hearing it like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
was expecting more like something funny
Yeah.
like that, but just go, yes.
Yeah.
That's, I mean,
But
it's funny.
that's one of those things where improv can really help you make split second decisions about little like things that you don't know anything about. Like this snake
Sure.
doesn't have a name, this snake doesn't have a background story, he's never coming back, you know, he doesn't have sentience, he just comes out and he's just being a snake. And it's a comedic moment, so I gave it a comedic sound. And that's not something that, unless you're used to rapidly making characters in the moment on the spot.
On Beyond the Hiss.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. Now, I haven't watched this, but
Sure.
I know you spent a lot of time on that show. Talk to me about the show. What's the premise of the show? What did you do for it?
Premise of the show, very, very large brushstrokes
Mhm.
is, and so every time there's a full moon, I believe it's a full moon. It's once a month. He has to hide, and the surrounding villages would offer up sacrifices and young women to the king. But secretly, what he was doing was he would take them down to his hiding spot, and he has a secret passage to let the girls escape. And he would just up to them because they think that he's eating the girls. He's not. And so the
Wow.
young girl, Sadi, our main character, she shows up, and she has been raised as a sacrifice. So she's never felt loved. She's never felt accepted. She's always felt expendable, right? And then she sees the king in this very vulnerable state. And he's telling her just to escape and live a life for herself. And she feels, whether it's pity or empathy or what have you, she stays with the king. So the whole show is about Saudi and the king, who she names Leo. He doesn't even have a name, he's just the king. And it's about them falling in love with each other and her
Oh,
trying
wow.
to be a human in the world of monsters. And so the character I play, if we were going to use the Beauty and the Beast analogy, I'm probably the Cogsworth.
Oh,
The
that's cool.
Yeah. So his name is Klops, and he's a twin. So him and his sibling, Sai, right? So Sai has an eye and hands or arms, and then Klops is a mouth and feet. And so together they make one Cyclops creature.
That's
Yeah.
great.
It's great. So my
Okay.
character does a lot of exposition and he does a lot of teaching to Sadi, teaching her about
Wow.
the Beast Kingdom, but he also looks after her and he the twins end up caring a lot about Sadi and they're always looking out for her. And it was a very fun process. I up until that point, I hadn't played a character for that long. I played Klops for 6 months,
Oh, wow.
every week for 6 months, and it is the most in depth of a character I've ever gotten.
That's
Uh,
cool.
yeah. Um, So how the process was great, you know. The hardest part, hardest in quotes, is just starting. Like how how do we make this character, right? And so because he's in every episode, he's a major character here. I we workshop back and forth, me and the director, what the voice was, because I went in there. Um, I knew 2 nights before or a night before. No, it had to have been 2 nights before that I was being cast, and this was the character, and this was the show. And I don't think any episodes were up yet, or
Oh,
if they were, it was the first episode. Maybe it was the first episode. And so I watch it and I listen to it in Japanese, and I kind of like, all right, well, the original voice is a female, so what can I do to
interesting.
make it, my own, but also keep to the spirit of it? And I went in there with this kind of voice here. He's just kind of just a little. It's not royalty. He works with royalty, so he needs to be a bit more distinguished. He needs this, and so we settled on me having like a mid-Atlantic accent. It's basically just like bad British. And so he started to drop his R's and he started to speak more officially and a little more self-assured up until he starts to freak out, and then everything just kind of falls apart. Um, and that was basically him for 6 months. And when he's really excited, sometimes the accent would drop. And I liked it because it was like, oh, he puts on a show that he's a lot more together than he really is. Um,
Wow.
and the director liked it. And so, yeah, it was just great. And then my favorite part about the process, and this has nothing to do with acting, was that my wife was a fan of the show before I was even cast.
That's cool.
And so when I told her I got cast, she immediately pulls out her phone, and she's been so supportive. And so every week we were watching the next episode in Japanese so I can do my research to figure out what I was going to do that next week. And so every week we just sat and watched every episode, and we would talk about it. And it was a fun bonding experience because we weren't married yet. We were still dating. I don't
Oh,
know.
wow.
That for me was
That's
just such a fun
cool.
thing. Yeah.
That is fun. So with the voices, I mean, that's oh gosh, I mean, so many questions come into my head. Uh, with you've done so many different show independent voice, or I mean, is it ever kind of have the same voice kind of for different ones, or how does that work?
Yeah. I mean, so the industry has been moving away from voices for quite a
Mhm.
while. And so in the studios I work for, they value the human voice, the natural, believable humanness
Oh,
of our voices. Now, I'm not saying that every project, everybody has to sound like a normal person, but that's what they value. They value acting first, voices second.
oh wow.
So if I go and I knock out a performance and I really give it all I've got, and it moves people, if my voice doesn't match the original Japanese, they don't care, because they're like, this matches the character, this matches the emotion, the themes, unless I'm being like literally a rhinoceros and I have to sound like a rhinoceros or whatever. But that being said, like I only have so many voices. Like I can go up here and I can go down here. That's about it. So
Okay, that's a pretty good
if
range.
thank you. So if they're asking me to do a low voiced, kind of big chested character, this is the only voice I've got. I can change up my pace. I can change up my dynamic range, my volume, my accent or dialect. I can change all the little facets, but the actual pitch at which I'm speaking, I can't change. And
Oh wow.
I can add a little bit more grit, but I can't take any of the gravel away because it's inherent to my lower voice, if that makes sense.
It
And if
does.
you
It
want me
does.
to go really up higher, I can do a falsetto, but that's really unpleasant to listen to for long periods of time. And so this is like my kind of my gremlin character, my gremlin character. And it's
Right.
also my if I hunch my shoulders and put my arms up here, it becomes my kind of eccentric older like scientist or wizard. He's just he's a little bit kooky, but he's got a good heart, you know. And so like it just whatever matches, whatever works for the character. But 9 times out of 10, it's just me right here. It's just me
Now
sounding.
that was really funny watching you go from that and just suddenly it's like, oh, and by the way, this is It's kind of like, wow.
Well, so I call this character right here. He's hunched his shoulders and his hands are up here. This is my librarian Nawan. I developed this voice specifically for an audiobook series that I'm actually still working on.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I've been librarian Narwan for 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. I've done 8 books, I believe, for that series. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Chalk it up. Another thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So that one's fun. So I play him, and then every other character in the books. That's how audiobooks generally work. So yeah,
Wow.
that's a fun series. It does really well too, which I really appreciate.
What's been the most challenging thing for you in a studio?
Mm.
When you go in, what's the hardest thing, or what's the most challenging thing that you experience or you have experienced?
Uh, or not directors, clients who are in a different country,
Oh,
only because of the cultural differences, and English is, especially if English isn't their first language, because
right.
there are language differences. So I'm thinking specifically about this time I was working with a Chinese client. So the I was working out of my home studio, this booth right here,
Hmm.
with China.
Okay.
So the director in LA, he was giving me certain directions, who is instructing, he's a drill sergeant, so he's instructing the new recruits on how to do first aid. And so I do the line, all right, recruits, we're going to grab our boxes and we're going to grab our gauze and we're going to lick the ends or whatever. And then after the take is done, the LA director asks the Chinese client, hey, was that good? And sometimes they say, yeah, that's good. And they'll move on. Or they'll say, no, can we do it again? So then I do it again. Um, my favorite moment ever, and I had to mute my microphone because I was laughing. So we did a line. The client didn't like it, so the and she they gave directions of what they wanted it to be, and so then the LA director reinterpreted those directions, gave it to me again. And I did it a second time, and he's like, "All right, cool, awesome, great job, Christian. Client, was that what you wanted?" There's a beat of silence. No, and there was another beat of silence, and like they offered no feedback at all. I had to mute because I found it so funny. And then the LA director is scrambling, like, okay, well, how do I okay, cool, let's just try something else. And I think that's also a good improv thing, right? If it's not working,
Sure.
you have to figure out something to make it work. And a lot of that's also has to do with experience. So I think that's tough, trying to please two different clients in two different countries who speak two different languages, and trying to make everybody happy at the same time is a bit tough.
I would say that could be a challenge.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I've had to do that a couple of times. Yeah.
All right. All right. So, you know, like for me, all of this is brand new to me.
Sure.
It's so fascinating. And this is why, we're doing this. And I'm so glad you're launching this for us.
Yeah. I'm
I
glad that
mean,
you
it's
guys
very
asked me.
special, and, what are misconceptions that people generally have? I mean, I'm sure people ask you questions all the time, or they say, "Hey, I think it's this or that." What are some of those misconceptions about voice acting that people tend to have?
There's two. There's two big ones, and they kind of feed into each other. One, that voice acting is all about voices, which we've already kind of talked about.
Right?
And then the other one is, in order to be a voice actor, you have to be good at impressions. And so a lot of people will come up to me and be like, oh, hey, here are my impressions. I should be a voice actor. Or another one that kind of feeds into it is if you have to have a good voice to be a voice actor. But let's like hone in on the impressions, right? So impressions are a great place to start
Okay.
as a voice actor. But a lot of people, and I think this is probably where it all stems from, is that people forget that voice acting is acting. I've actually had on screen actors talk down to me because they called themselves real actors. And I was like, well, that's harsh. you know.
Okay.
But that's fine. But like people think that because we're not seen, quote unquote, that it's easier somehow.
Right.
I can never be on camera. Well, why not? You're an actor. As an actor, if you put me on a stage, you put me in front of a camera, you put me behind a microphone, I'm going to be okay. I will excel and I will complete the task and I might even do a great job. Um, and if you're not prepared to do all that as an actor, maybe reevaluate your motivations.
Sure.
So, and I'm not trying to like discourage anybody, but I also don't want people to get into to try and pursue this career and have their hearts broken because
Right.
it can be like anything else. It can be cruel, And if you go in there and you're all excited because you think you got everything figured out, and then they're like, "Well, we don't need a Homer Simpson," like that guy has been doing Homer Simpson since the start, you know.
Right.
It's very rare that people will studios will need people to come in and do established characters already. It's either because of controversy, and that's a job that's really hard to take up anyways, or it's because of a death. And
Right.
while that's less controversial, it's also, rare. Like I've met the one of the actors who has done Daffy Duck, but Daffy like is the same character forever until, of course, they pass away. Don't forget it's acting. You like anime, you're a fan of it, that's great, but it's not about doing the anime voice. It's not about doing the ooh woos or whatever.
Hmm.
You need to be able to come in there as a professional, as an actor, and even if you're not doing the pro tag, like I'm an anime, you're not doing that voice. You're still in anime. You're still acting. You're putting your heart out and letting everybody look at it. Because
Sure.
if you're nervous to act in front of people, voice acting isn't going to make you less nervous, especially at a professional level. At a professional level, I am always a window between me and the director and the engineer, and they can see me. And if I'm doing it online like this, generally I have my camera on and they can watch me.
Right.
Um, or even if they can't see me, they can hear me really, really well because I paid too much money for this microphone and it's pretty clear. So when they are there's this weird like vulnerability of them just listen. You can get away with like mouth clicks. I watch TV shows and I can hear their mouth noises and it makes me crazy because I can't get away with that in voice acting term.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're voicing a character,
Mhm.
do you have a screen in front of you with that character at the time, and you're just following along with the actions, or is it just something that they say go, and then that you hear other dialogue with it? How does that work?
Oh, that's interesting. It depends on the genre. So in anime, it is a completely finished product. I am voicing along with the animation. So we will preview the animation.
Hmm.
The characters are on screen. They're in a wagon and they're talking about taking an arrow to the knee. But it's all in Japanese, so I get to hear my character first in Japanese to kind of get the flavor.
Okay.
And then they will go back, start it over, switch the track, so now it's only the English. And sometimes I will get the other actors who have recorded before me, and I can play off of them, but not
Oh.
always.
Oh.
Right? So I did another show, actually using a very similar voice. This show was, oh no, The House. Oh my gosh. I played a yokai. I was a
Oh,
little
wow.
umbrella. I was a little umbrella boy, and they're in quite a few episodes. And in that show, generally, I was recording first, and so I had nobody to work off of. It was just literally me talking into a void, and then pretending like someone's talking, even though it's silent, and then reacting to that. Um, And and then the person after me, they can then play off of my voice.
So you
But
never want to be first.
I mean, sort of, but sometimes it's nice because there are times in that same show. Oh man, I cannot remember what it's called. Along with my little yokai, the Umbrella Boy, I played other yokai just throughout the series, like minor characters. So there was one where it's a fox spirit,
Oh,
and this
okay.
fox spirit, and so as part of that, we did group wall cues. So all of us spoke at once, and it was me and three other ladies. And for whatever reason, they couldn't schedule us all at once, so they scheduled us two at a time. And me and another actor named Kelsey Cruz, it was kind of nice because I didn't have to match anybody else. I got to set
Sure.
and just leave.
Wow. So when you go into a studio, I mean, is it an all day affair usually? Is it an hour? Is it 15 minutes? I mean,
It
walk me through it.
varies.
I
Yeah.
guess it's got to be a lot of different things, but what is kind of, when you get to the studio, what's kind of an average, as average as it could be, kind of process for you?
Well, so it depends on how many shows I've been called in for that day. So I
Hmm.
have gone in for as little as 15 minutes to as much as, yeah, all day. Like I've once done 8 or 9 shows in one day.
Separate shows.
Yeah, separate shows in one day. Yeah, I spent the whole day there. Um, yeah, right. And so when people, and this is one of those things where like I feel kind of bad because people are like, oh my gosh, you're in the show. I love that show. It's so great. Have you watched it? And I'm like, no, no, I can't. I physically cannot keep up with the different shows. It sounds like I'm bragging, like I do so many
No,
shows, I can't
no.
keep up. But it's like if I pop in episode 4 of a show, I just don't have the time to watch all those episodes to get caught up.
Right.
But yeah, so on average, when I get called in for a single show, I'll be there for an hour or two.
Oh, wow.
And if you're like the lead and you have like tons and tons of lines, you're there for about 4 to 6,
Oh, wow.
depending
Okay.
on the complexities of your lines, right?
Sure.
Um, but generally, I average about 2-ish hours. I've done less, I've done more, obviously, for a single show. Um, that was your question, right? I kind of sometimes
Yeah.
I just kind of keep going and I forget the original question.
Yeah, it's funny. A funny concept came into my mind here, and I was kind of curious. So, let's imagine you're really deep into a character, and then suddenly
Yeah.
is there a
Oh,
meltdown?
and you mess up a line. Uh, no, there's never a meltdown, right? So I've had it where I will have like I'll take a drink of water like I've been doing, and then I'll
Mhm.
have I don't even know what causes it, but I'll have this noise of my esophagus just making like a croaking sound, right? And that'll mess up a line. I can't control that.
Right.
Um, I will have then lines where I just flub because I make a mistake or what have you. And generally, like what they will do is they'll just keep going.
Okay.
So you don't stop and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Can we start over?" Um, because what they want is generally you just keep going and either start the line over and don't match the flaps, talking anime specifically, and you just go. And then hopefully after it's over, the engineer can then move it into place and it all fits and it all works.
Ooh.
Or if you flub it up and you don't start over, you just keep going because maybe the engineer can make the back half work or the front
Right.
half or whatever. So like there could be something salvageable. But if you stop and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," they can't use that take
Right.
at all because there's nothing there. Um, so no, I've never had a director freak out or meltdown. I've seen people flub lines like over and over and over again, and I don't mean just like newer actors. I mean like full-on pros who've been here for a long time, who have leads in a bunch of stuff. People make mistakes, and it happens. It's all about your attitude, right? Like if you too long, like a
Mhm.
fraction of a second, you just boop, and you just start over, and you keep going, and it's as long as you are trying your best, the directors understand.
Okay, that's good. I was thinking about that. I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder what would happen if you did this.
Yeah.
No, do you do you spend most of your time when you're doing your lines? It sounds like probably the majority of it is solo. I mean, do you have times when you have multiple characters around?
Oh, I see. The multiple person recording, like two characters talking, is generally your Hollywood studios do that.
Ah, okay.
And even then, that's not all the time. That's going to be very specific shows where the showrunners find that it is, mm, they're not getting the desired outcome they want. Because
Hmm.
especially when you get actors who are not, they don't specialize in voice acting. Like
Sure.
they'll be brought on because they are a name, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Hollywood actors, but they again they don't practice. They're used to being they're used to having sets and they're used to having props and other actors. In
Right.
voice acting, you have none of those things. If I need a prop, I have to pretend I have it. And this is another way, actually, how improv really helps. Because in improv, you don't get costumes, you don't get props, you don't get sets. You're usually on a black set. You're wearing all black usually, and you have no props. So everything is pretend. So if you can do that on stage in front of, let's be real, sometimes it's like 15 people in an audience, or
Hmm.
if it's our biggest audience I think is like 2,500. It doesn't really matter if you can do that there. You can go into a little black box like this and pretend I have an orb, pretend I have
Right.
a wand or whatever. Your original question was what?
Oh, about multiple people, together
Yes.
or not? Because
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and now you say that even more. Going back to an earlier statement, to me, I've been on 10, 15 different sets,
Mhm.
and being part of it or watching, in the front, they have green screen, they have things to put in place for people to interact with,
Mhm.
you know, but when you don't have that and you don't have somebody beside you, you don't have other actors right beside you, and you're having to imagine all this. You don't have somebody in a green costume or a blue costume, to interact with. To me, that is far more complicated than on a stage where you've got everything set out. You're interacting, the dialogue's there, you see people, you're interacting with people and everything around you. To me, what you're talking about and what you're doing in the box there is far more complex.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of voice actors would agree with you because they want to validate what we're doing, right? But I think that there's a trade-off for both. When you're on set for a movie, it's not just the director and sound recorder. You've got a
Right.
lot of people who are waiting on you. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of pressure to get the lines right, to get and you not only are you doing lines, you have to worry about the choreography and all of like, hit your marks, look this way. It's a lot, it's very stringent, right? And you have a
I'm,
lot
I'm,
of,
I'm going to have to counter. I'm going to have to counter.
please.
You're watching flaps.
That's true. Yeah,
I'd rather have to worry about choreography than watching and matching flaps.
sure.
I'm
And that
sorry. I'm gonna have to defend the voice actors on this one.
Oh, and
Uh,
look, I, I,
yeah,
I I think that they both have their challenges.
they do. They do. They
I
do.
can't say that one's harder over the other. And also too, like there are like for Diablo specifically, I had nothing to look at. I had a script and that was it. And then I had the directors in my ear.
Oh,
And then
wow.
like so like for those I had an engineer in Dallas because they hired out or they rented a studio space for me in Dallas. And so I had an engineer in Dallas, and I had an engineer in LA, then I had the director, and then I had at least one writer on the call,
Okay.
not multiple. So that was kind of fun. I had a little committee deciding if I was doing good or not.
Oh, wow. No
And like
pressure.
yeah, and we had screens and stuff. Like the studio I was in here in Dallas is really nice. Dallas Audio Post. And they've got all kinds of screens, they've got all kinds of cool gadgets and gizmos, but literally I had a paper script and a microphone, and that was it. And so for that,
Wow.
like I'll get the lines, especially for stuff like that. I'll get the lines the night before, but I didn't have character descriptions, I didn't have names. I had file names and the lines. And so when I get there, they give me the context, and now I have to make the decision of, okay, what does this character sound like? What are they doing?
Wow.
You know,
That's where that improv comes in.
it has to. I will always recommend people. I will always recommend people who want to get into voice acting to do improv.
I mean, I see the synergy. I see that. I mean, more and more that you're talking about it. Wow. I mean,
People
yeah.
find improv to be terrifying. Well, you don't have a script to, you don't know what to do. But it's like okay, you're asking about like what's an average day for anime. I especially, well, both. Whether I get a named character or a Walla session, and in Walla sessions, after you do the group cues, you will split off and do bits. Bits are just unnamed characters.
Okay.
Um, you really never know what you're in there to do. There have been times where I've been called into the studio, right, for a solo session, and sometimes I'll go and do bits. Just like the show will have like 1,000 bits. I'm just there to help them clear them out. Or I'll have a named character, but they won't put that in the email. They're just like, hey, we want you to come in for an hour tomorrow. I'm like, I don't know why, but that's fine. And so I'll get to the studio, into the reception area, and they tell me what studio I'm going to be in. And then I go to my session, and all I know is what show I'm on and how, and then the director will give me a rundown of what the show's about and what because they
Mhm.
want me to make those decisions, to put myself into it.
Okay.
And so all I have on my character is literally to be.
Wow.
And so if you are, like I said, if you're not used to creating characters from scratch quickly, it can be tough. Now, eventually, as you get more super, like no one under the age of, like anybody born in this millennium doesn't know what a Rolodex is, right? Yeah. So, uh, like we call it what you like, a catalog of characters
Sure.
that you have. And as long as you understand the different components of creating a character, you can change one aspect of a like that's why I name my voices like
My librarian Nawan. I can change one aspect, and he will become a different character. Many things, and all of a sudden, he's just different.
but
Wow.
I can only and then change certain aspects to make it fit whatever they want. Like with Clops, I came in there with an doing. It was a code name game. All I knew was where I needed to be and how long I was going to be there. And once I got there, everything emailed me today, and they want accents. They want everybody to be British. And so and this is where that preparedness versus opportunity thing comes, because it's told me this is what's happening.
Right.
And and luckily for me, I love doing accents. It's something that I did everything, and it was 2 hours and 1 minute. It gives you the ability to adapt and pivot really quickly. Some people will get really set in the way they deliver lines, but you can't, because if they give you directions and you can't.
Well, I tell you, it's funny because resilience seems to be something that's disappearing in the world.
Well, so that's another thing too. And because I will teach newbies into voice acting, and I always try and tell them like, hey, I'm not trying to demoralize you, dissuade you, or anything, but your motivation, because their motivation was to make it big.
Mhm.
You need to have, if you want to be pro, you have to have a motivation that is kind of unshakable. You have to be able to go work at Kroger or Walmart or whatever, and then go to sleep. And then the next time I'm not acting, I don't know what to do. For me though, it comes down, it's a part of me. And if your motivation is to be famous, to be rich, to be liked, to go to conventions, money wasted because they don't feel it in their soul.
Right.
They need to do this. Like there's that old general who they say they took his entire army and then either burned the bridge or burned the irresponsible way. Because when I first started acting as an adult, I wasn't married. I wanted this more than anything. And I was doing jobs for free. I was doing, like, my first audiobooks were royalty share, which means no, I don't get paid up front. I only get
Right.
paid royalties. and it's like I get 20%, and it's only if the books sell well, you know. And so for all the royalty shares, tell you what. But if you're not, I'm not saying like, hey, take it on the chin to be a professional, but and being famous. And
Absolutely.
and voice actors, we tend not to be as famous as our on-camera counterparts, which is fine for me. I'm not looking to be famous, and I don't want to be rich. I just want to have enough money where I can take care of Also Works. And luckily for me, she enjoys working. Even if we were incredibly wealthy, she would still work because she enjoys it.
It's like any profession.
My oldest sister, she has a PhD in psychology, and so when I first moved, she poured everything she had into becoming a psychologist because that's what she. And then after she got her degree, she did internships, and there's a very structured path that she could follow to become a psychologist.
Mhm.
Acting, there's no path. So you have to be willing to be lost for huge long stretches at a time. Because to get guidance is never free.
Right.
Getting a mentor is really tough and is very rare. And then, so like for me, every time I have no idea what's going on, I would level up. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It's companies that I think could use voiceovers because I do more than just anime, right? I do audiobooks. I've done e-learning narration, like educational narration for things.
Oh wow.
I've done like college projects for kids. Um, their last chance to be a voice actor, you're gonna burn out. I have,
Oh wow.
and so if I get the email saying, "Hey, you've been cast," I have to go. I will go insane thinking about all these auditions I've done. Like, oh, I hope I get it. I do hope I get it, but I also need to keep working and need to keep going. And yeah, I can't wait. I have to keep moving, or else I'm like a shark. I will drown if I don't keep moving.
Well, I will tell you more and stuff that hasn't even made it there yet. So I'd say that you're doing something right. I mean, just from looking at it from my perspective, I mean, and that's just titles. That's not. I mean, you have episodes within and things like that. So I would say if I don't know anything about, which I don't, he's probably giving some good insight here because whether the way, I mean, crazy. And all these things happening. You're a go-getter. You're driven. You love it. It's your life. And I think it's a lot that what most people are going to experience, at least from the challenges that they may not get good realistic perspective, so that they don't go in and just crash and burn up front, which is
Right.
what you talked about earlier.
And I will also say too to be more motivational, I guess. Because again, I don't want Harris as he sits with his twirly mustache and his little wavy hair. I I'm a different person than I was when I started, right? So I got back into acting as an adult in 2017, I think. I have a massive anxiety disorder, and I have a
Um,
huge history of depression. And so when I first started, I was a very different person. I have now gained confidence, but it hasn't been an easy journey, right? I started in a closet, a walk in closet that was narrower than this is, and I had hoodies as sound absorption. And I had a $100
oh,
microphone that my brother in law bought for me. And I was borrowing my niece's laptop because I had no money. I was selling plasma just to help, like, keep things going for me. And so to me, because if all I wanted to do was be famous, I'm not going to get that because for me, I'm getting more out of it. And so to me, they always say that thing like, if I can do it, any are if you have a need to do this, I have done it. But that's not saying that like every day is all roses and cherries, right? Like I'm a human being just like anybody else. I get jealous. of other actors who are doing really, really well while maybe I'm having a dry period. Or I will feel it's all ups and downs, but you have to be able to keep going into the studio or into your closet or under the blanket or some people will make little boxes full of foam, like whatever it is. Or even if you're just like, when I first started, before I even had a microphone, I would just go into my closet and read books out loud.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
I couldn't afford classes, I couldn't afford equipment, I didn't know how to find auditions, but I had a need, so I would go and I would do it. And I will even say, when I got the microphone and I recorded myself for the very first time, I was devastated by how bad I was. Absolutely mortified. I could barely leave the bed for I was like a week or 2 weeks
Oh,
because I
wow.
was so distraught at how bad I was. But again, I needed to do this. So I keep trying and I keep going. And if you don't like the sound of your own voice, I really hope that all you do is work in professional studios with engineers because the working at home voice actor, I edit my own auditions, I edit my own audiobooks, I edit all my own narration. There
Oh,
are times where I have had to edit even character stuff that I've done. And so I have listened to my voice more than anybody else in this world. And if you can't stand your own voice, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Or
that
hopefully you're
makes a lot of
independently
sense.
wealthy. Yeah, if you're independently wealthy and you can hire an engineer to engineer all your auditions, awesome. I'm maybe you can donate some my way. Uh, but yeah, like we have to do a lot, and you have
Well,
to have a belief in yourself.
for those watching, I will challenge everybody go check out his IMDb. That's a pretty darn good resume. So
Thank you.
he may not think that he's famous, but I'll tell you what, that is a pretty darn good resume. With me looking at it again, I'm your connoisseur. I'm the person watching it and enjoying it, what you do. So you
Thank
know
you.
what I see that I see, that's a pretty darn good resume to me. So to me, that's don't undersell. I think you've done a pretty amazing job, and especially in the time and with what you do with it. And it leads me to another question: are there any really cool things coming up? What do anything you work on you can talk about?
Uh, yeah. I mean, so I have that con. Me and my team, we have at least one con a month all year, sometimes
Oh,
two.
wow.
Um, so like yeah, like this weekend we're going to Mesquite, Texas
Mesquite.
for Windbloom, and then the first weekend of September we're going to be at Anime Texas in
Oh,
Houston, and then I think we get a pretty big break, which will be nice. And then October we're doing the Renaissance Fair in Cottonwood and Amarillo, and then November I get another break, and then December I've got OkiCon, and then I have an 18 plus con that I'm doing. So
uh-oh.
yeah,
Oh, that might be for another video.
yeah, it's a different crowd. So, but those are also, doing all that stuff. But then as far as like projects I'm currently working on, um, right now I'm kind of bouncing between two different shows, just jumping in and doing bits and additional voices. I'm doing Wand of Wistoria.
Uh-huh.
I believe that's what that one's called. And the other one is called Berserk of Gluttony. I'm doing just about all of those episodes at the moment.
Wow.
Um, I'm working on an audiobook, a different series, not the Professor or Librarian Narwan one. It's a different one. I've done 3 or 4 of that series so far. So I'm working on that audiobook. I'm getting called in to do. Oh wait, I maybe can't talk about that one. I have another one. It's a mobile game. I can't talk about.
All
Uh,
right, that's okay. We'll you know what? We'll watch for IMDb to see what comes out, and then we'll know.
yeah, yeah. And then I post about all this stuff. So if you're following me, you see whenever something that I'm in drops, I drop it.
And we're
I'm
going to have
also
links. We're going to have links in our description. So make sure if you want to find out more, we're going to have, different social media, your social media that you use,
yep,
your website, his IMDb links. So you can keep up with what he's doing as well. We're going to have that all there. And also you do coaching, right? You help
yeah.
coach people into
Mhm.
voice acting, right?
Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching with people. All skill levels are welcome. If you are much, much better than me, I don't know how much I have to teach you. Um, And then I am teaching in September a 101 course. It's a group class. It's your value. It's a lot cheaper. It's $75 for four classes.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a little, less than $25 a class. Um, but that one is very much, I call those kind of classes, this is a microphone. It is very much for, I have no idea how to start. There's so much information, all of it's conflicting. I don't understand what's a condenser versus a dynamic versus a ribbon microphone. Like, do I need a interface, USB versus XLR? I cover all that stuff. And then we also
Oh, wow.
do practice of all the major genres of voiceover, like commercial narration and character work. And
So
then, yeah.
for anybody who wants to join that, is there an age requirement or all ages, all
All
everything? Or
ages. Yeah, I would prefer kids who are at the age where they can read. That'll make
okay,
reading scripts a lot easier, But no, I don't have any age requirements for that because I've taught elementary school kids. I've done at various theaters and places around Dallas. I have taught like summer camps for middle school kids, elementary school kids, high schoolers. So yeah, I don't really have as long as you're there with a good attitude, that's all I really want.
I like that. So anybody watching that's interested, like I said, we're going to include this in the description. Make sure if you're interested, make sure you check it out. Even if you're not sure, check it out. Click on it, read up more on it, learn more. I think I mean, you've gotten a really good idea what you're going to get. This is somebody who lives and breathes and loves what he does. And, he's got a fantastic resume. I don't think he gives himself enough credit there, but, I am thoroughly impressed, and I'm more impressed with your just no nonsense perspective on it, and it's not negative, it's not positive, it's just if you're going to go into it, this is something you just need to be aware of because you know if you aren't aware of it, you're not prepared for it, it can turn out not so great. So just be ready for it and just stick with it, have the passion.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's all I took away from this. I mean, nothing negative at all. As a matter of fact, it's saying, hey, you know what? If I really want to do this, then I really got to buckle down and be smart about it
Yeah.
and be prepared for these things. And it may not always be roses, but the rosy part of it, in the next morning is that you love it.
And classes, you do not have to have the aspirations of becoming a professional actor to take my class. I've had people who were like, they just want to start a podcast.
Oh,
Or I had one fella who is a teacher and he was going to be traveling for the summer and he wanted to create videos for his students when he got back and just teaching, like how to act in front of a microphone or in front of a
oh,
camera
wow.
or even just being able to read a script. So and it's kind of like the same thing for improv. People will take improv for confident stuff or to meet people. So whatever your motivation is, even if you just want to be a hobbyist, voice actor, that's completely fine. Not my rules, my perspective and my advice will differ, right? So if you want to be a professional, I might ride you a little harder.
Okay.
But if you're just like, hey, I just want to understand. I just want to learn. Awesome, cool. Come and join, and you'll be absolutely welcome. I won't make fun of you or anything. I promise.
No, and I can see that because, again, you love it and, it's important. So no, that's awesome. And again, anybody, make sure you check it out in our description. We're going to have the links. We're going to have everything so you can reach out, you can follow him, what's going on. And I encourage really pay close attention. I'd almost say go through and watch this a second time just to make sure whatever you missed on the first one, maybe it's a different context. And as you go through, because even me, I'm going to go back through it because I want to just kind of relive this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it all just makes so much sense. I didn't realize just, the complexities and the nuances. And that's just, we didn't even scratch the surface. So, but, so with this, and you've been so fantastic. I do want to probe you one more time for Christian the philosopher. So, what what good philosophy, if you were to, imparting on somebody who wants to, you shared so much and it's almost as like it's summing everything up, but, you know, what is that one thing that you would say is the most important thing for somebody mentally who wants to become or consider being a voice actor?
You have to do it for you. You cannot act for anyone else. You cannot be creative for anyone else. And I personally don't think you can succeed for anyone else. It has to be for yourself. It, it has to be because you are your own greatest advocate and you can also be your own greatest enemy. So that is very important to do it for you, to fill a need that you have.
I That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I mean that was perfect. So anyway, so thank you again. I know, I mean, last time we talked, I mean, I know you were rushing from the studio. I mean, I think you just like 3 minutes coming out of Crunchyroll, and
Yeah.
thank you so much. I mean, on behalf of me, channel, our subscribers, fans, anybody who views this, I mean, your time is so important, and the fact, and thank your wife for letting us borrow you, on late hours, and tell her we much appreciate it.
Okay, I
And
promised her
again,
I would clean up the house after this, so she's happy.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. I like that. So anyway, I thank you so very much. You are so awesome. I look forward to following your career as it continues to blossom. And I encourage everybody else too. And hopefully we're going to cross paths at some convention. We love to go to the conventions, and I hope we really do. I know you're over in North Texas, in Dallas area, right?
In Dallas, correct? Yeah.
So, and I'm over in Utah, but I imagine at some point we're going to cross paths at some.
Time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are awesome, man. And again, everybody, make sure you check it out. We'll have everything in our description. If you have any questions that you have that we may have missed or something, let us know so we can get to him and make sure you get that.
Perfect.
So, as always, again, thank you so much. You have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. And for everybody, and if maybe since little Carlisle's not here, we always leave our channel on a peace out so we can do this in concert.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Peace
Peace
out.
out.